Morning. My name is Lois Block, and it is my pleasure, on behalf of the Seniors College Board of Directors, to welcome you to the Fall Term Information Session. It is always a delight to welcome back our returning members, and a special pleasure to welcome several new members into the folds of the Seniors College community. Once again, we have an amazing array of course offerings. And for this, I would like to thank all the members of the Curriculum Committee, ably chaired by Ann Chisholm. In particular, we extend special thanks to faculty coordinators Joan Hicks, Jocelyn Hillo, and Fern Jordan, and our technical support masters, Bob Russell and Bill Lee, for getting all this together. It is also a great pleasure to welcome back our returning instructors, Virginia Stephen, members of the Nova Scotia Criminal Justice Association, Alan Griffiths, and Hilda Taylor. We extend special thanks to Hilda Taylor for replacing Angus Smith, whose course had to be canceled. Hilda was to have offered her very popular course in the spring of 2020, you may remember, but that's when we had to cancel all of our classes at the beginning of the pandemic. And we are very pleased to extend a warm welcome to our new instructor, Pierre Schmidt. Of course, we will be looking for class managers for each of our courses, and we hope that you will consider volunteering for this important position. We would also like to encourage anyone with skills in the technical support area to please consider volunteering as well. Training will be provided by Bob and Bill. And now I invite you all to sit back and enjoy as we hear about this very interesting fall term lineup of courses. I pass the baton to you, Jocelyn Hillo.
Thank you, Lois, for the lovely introduction, and welcome to everybody. I have a few words to tell you about before I introduce our first instructor. First, I'd like to remind you that Lois is the president of the Seniors College, and all our volunteers will tell you how we appreciate her hard work, and especially how she has helped us to progress in deciding what to do in order to teach you during this pandemic. If you have not done it lately, go to our website. Our webmaster, Bill Lee, has continuously updated that site. Almost each item on the menu leads to more choices. For example, if you go to Contacts under the menu choice, scroll down the page and you will find a form that you can fill to maybe suggest who you would like to have as an instructor or how you would like to help. Or maybe you know of a venue where the in-person courses will be able to be given in the future. And you can help in HRM or in the chapter by filling the form. I would also like to thank our tech team, who are also our audiovisual experts, Bob Russell and Bill Lee, and they do an enormous amount of work. They allow us to have this session, the courses. We all benefited from the advantages of having online courses. Above all, we should all be pleased to have reduced our carbon footprint, since we have reduced the amount of transportation that we use to go to a course. And we don't lose time driving, going through traffic and through construction, and we can also take online courses regardless of which chapter we live in or near to. When we choose a course, there is no limited seating space. we can just get into the course we choose. We can also view a recording after a course if we missed part of it. And when we have a cold or a hot drink that we forgot to bring to the course, we can just go and get it. We can stand up, we can sit down, we can move, we can stretch, we can laugh, we can do things without bothering the neighbor. So I will admit, though, that it would be nice to be able to see and to talk to each one of you, and this will happen in the future. I want to also thank my colleagues as faculty coordinators, Joan Hicks, who's the big boss, and Fern Jordan in Mahone Bay. We all work as a team. And above all, too, we want to thank our past and our future, our present instructors, without whom we do not have the senior college. Okay, so now I will start to present. I have the honor to say a few words to introduce our instructor for the Monday course, Virginia Stephen. She will be teaching a course that is entitled Women Artists Through Art History, Hidden but Very Present. You know, Virginia taught only once previously an in-person course at the Seniors College, and it was in Mahone Bay, and it took place in 2017. That earlier course was entitled The Art of Seeing. It's not only about art. Virginia has a very intriguing, appealing titles that make you want to walk directly to the classroom. But you'll have to wait a few weeks before you can do that. I find that the titles make you eager to join her, to make discoveries, to go exploring, to go and listen about art and artists. So it sounds really like fun. We have to thank Fern Jordan, who is the faculty coordinator in Mahone Bay, for inviting Virginia to teach at the Seniors College. The video conferencing allows more instructors from outside HRM to offer Zoom courses from their home without even having to travel. Now, if you looked at Virginia's biography on the Seniors College website or on the internet, you must have seen that Virginia is a very prolific artist, a multi-talented artist with an amazing career. Excuse me. So I will try to give you a short overview of her education and of her past career. In terms of education, Virginia has undergrad degrees in art history and art education from Queen's University. And she also has a master's in visual and performing arts education from UBC. She worked in many provinces, including Alberta, Nova Scotia, Ontario. She also worked in California. She was invited to give presentations in Canada, the US, and Europe. Virginia's career spans over 40 years and includes being a high school teacher, an art educator, an art gallery director, an art historian, a curator in museums, an art administrator, and she is an artist herself and a consultant. Virginia has written exhibition catalogs and books for museum audiences of all ages. She also wrote for museum periodicals, anthologies, and peer-reviewed journals in Canada and the US. As an artist, she has done work in basketry, printmaking. She is a painter, a fiber artist, a felt maker, and she also likes to combine many media in her art. Virginia is actively engaged in volunteering in her profession and in the community. So we are very lucky that Virginia is now living in Nova Scotia and in Lunenburg. And you will be pleased to know that Virginia's passion is in art education. So without any delay, I will invite Virginia to come and tell us about her Monday course that will start on October 18th. Come on in, Virginia.
Jocelyn, thank you for that introduction. No wonder I feel tired today. As Jocelyn said, my background is in art history and art and in art museum teaching and museum education. But the thread that goes through all that is learning. And I took the opportunity when Fern invited me to do a course to do some learning of my own. So you're going to be guinea pigs on a whole new course, but it's something I've always wanted to do. Way back in the dark ages when I was studying art history at Queen's in the early 70s, you all remember that, we had a number of wonderful textbooks. But the thing that stood out was that there were hardly any women artists mentioned other than contemporary ones. So it's always been my passion to look for those women. And so this course gave me a chance to actually focus that. And you'll see behind me actually a wall of, I realize, is all women artists except for one. And it's even including my young granddaughter. So we go from one of Canada's revered contemporary women artists, Gathy Falk, who is the apples behind my head, to at the time 12-year-old Zella's art. Kenneth Clark, who we all looked to as a scholar that taught us a lot about, a lot of us read about civilization and things from him. One of his famous books was called, was about nudes, and there was not one single woman artist in that whole book, but there were lots of naked ladies. He also, in the Civilization book, pretty much dismisses women artists. And when someone asked him about that, he said, well, after all, there had been no women composers either. And he supposed that they just lacked the architectonic sense for making music as they lacked it for building and painting. So that's what we were kind of up against. So I'm just going to share my screen and tell you a little bit about the details of the course. Here we go. As Jocelyn said, it's on Mondays, starting on the 18th. It's not it's time, from 1:30 to 3. And as I said, it's come from a desire to open some of the books to women throughout art history. I'm not going to take sort of a chronological look, although there will be quite a bit of chronology in there, but I'm taking more a thematic look at the women artists and sort of grouping them in groups that talk about their situation. This lovely article in the newspaper about Frida Kahlo, who gleefully dabbles in works of art alongside her painter husband, who was really much better, they said. I don't think I'd call Frida a dabbler. So some of the themes I'm going to look at, we'll start with a little introduction and overview, and then we'll talk, and this is not necessarily in order, but we'll talk, one discussion will be about what do we assume about women's art? Like this journalist that women are dabblers is one of the things that we have assumed. We'll look at women's work and how women's art has come from the work that women do as part of home. We'll look at flora and fauna, which are important parts of women's work. We'll look at some groundbreakers and how they broke the ground. We'll look at how women see themselves through self-portraiture, and we'll also look at women as muse and artists, because there were several women artists who were connected to a male artist and were a model or a studio assistant, but were wonderful artists in their own right. So we're going to meet a number of a lot of paintings in the work, and I kind of looked at this course as sort of curating my ideal exhibition because I had access to not just my own collection at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia or the Art Gallery of Alberta, but of the world. So, and I'm not going to tell you the names of any of the artists today because you'll have to come to the course and find out. So just a few examples of some of the artworks that you'll be meeting. And you'll see a wide array. We're going to look mostly at up to 1900, because then contemporary would be a whole different kind of course. So maybe that's for later. So we'll go up until that period. And that is about all I have to say about the course. I hope you'll join it. I think it'll be fun. I hope you'll meet some artists whose work you've never seen before. I've already come across a couple that I didn't know about, and I'm really happy to have found. So thank you for coming today, and look forward to meeting you all on Mondays at 1:30. And now I turn the microphone over to Joan.
Hi, I'm really pleased to introduce Kit Waters. And Kit's going to be coordinating the course Criminal Justice in Nova Scotia. One size does not fit all. And it's going to be taking place on Tuesday mornings, starting October 5th and going till November 9th. Kit was employed with the Nova Scotia Department of Justice for 30 years, retiring as Executive Director of Policy and Information Management. And following retirement, she carried on as a consultant in the criminal justice field and conducting policy research and program evaluation. Then over the last 10 years, she's also been teaching courses, criminology courses at St. Mary's University. And Kit was a founding member of the Nova Scotia Criminal Justice Association and is currently past president of the John Howard Society of Nova Scotia. And this course is being presented by the Nova Scotia Criminology Justice Association, which is a non-governmental provincial organization. And its members include individuals working in all components of the field of justice, as well as their partners in the field of health, education, and social services. And the association is involved in a wide range of activities aimed at promoting a humane, equitable, effective criminal justice system. And that's the focus of this course. So I turn it over now to you, Kit, to tell us about it and the array of experts that you've engaged to present it.
Thank you very much, Joan. I appreciate the introduction. And good morning to everyone. We in the Nova Scotia Criminal Justice Association are no strangers to the SCANS group because we have presented a course. We presented a course 2 years ago, which was an overview of the criminal justice system in Nova Scotia. And we presented it in Halifax and also beautiful Mahone Bay. We presented there as well. And in the course, I think we all observed that the system has been very frustrated by its inability to deal with people who commit offenses when really we can see that the root causes of the offending behavior are linked to poverty, marginalization, mental health, and addictions issues. So in this course, it's really step 2, but people don't have had to have taken our first course to enjoy the second course. But in this course, Criminal Justice in Nova Scotia, One Size Does Not Fit All, we wanted to examine the issues in more depth and see how the steps that the system has taken to be able to respond. And as Joan mentioned, we have assembled what we feel is a truly remarkable group of speakers who will share their experiences with us. So to kick off the course, we felt that there was no one better qualified than Chief Judge Pam Williams. She's the Chief Judge of the Provincial and Family Courts in Nova Scotia. And she's been a champion of the development of what we are referred to as wellness courts in Nova Scotia. And for many, many years, she presided over the mental health court in Dartmouth. She will be giving us an overview of the wellness courts, give us some information. That's interesting. Something is happening on my screen. I'm not sure what, but I'm just going to keep on going. All right. So our first session, Judge Pam Williams will give us this orientation of the wellness courts and how they emerged and what their role is. And we'll look at some of the results. You know, how effective have they been? What are some of the challenges that remain? In our second session, we're going to be looking at domestic violence courts. And it's, I think, very obvious that criminal courts have faced many, many challenges in dealing with domestic violence cases. And they're special cases in many, many ways. They're first and foremost a violation of the safety of the family. They often involve children, so obviously great care has to be taken. And interestingly enough, unlike many other offenses, the perpetrator and the victim in quite a number of cases resume living together after the violence. So the domestic violence courts were created to address these challenges, and they are many. And fortunately, we will hear from the person who is responsible for coordinating the program in Nova Scotia. I think it's going to be so interesting to hear from her because she will be able to tell us about how the program evolved, the growing pains, and there were many, and where it stands at this point after a number of years in operation. For our third session, we will be dealing with sexual assault cases. And I think well before the Jian Ghomeshi trial, which of course enraged many in the public, concerns have been voiced about the way in which incidents of sexual assault are handled. And we believe that this session is going to be extremely useful in addressing many of the public misperceptions about these cases and the way they're handled. And who better to speak to us than a seasoned Crown prosecutor who has specialized in handling these cases for many years, and also a legal aid lawyer who's represented many accused in sexual assault trials. I think that this session, well, they're all going to be fabulous, but I am truly looking forward to this case because I just think there is so much misrepresentation, misperception, and that really, I think, contributes to a questioning of the overall justice system. So that's going to be a tremendous, tremendous session. Next, we're going to be dealing with how the criminal justice system deals with accused persons who have addictions. And we're well aware, even people who are not directly involved in the justice system, I think we're all well aware that many individuals who get involved in the criminal justice system suffer from addictions, and the revolving door that goes from addictions to homelessness to incarceration and starts all over again. It's a long-standing critical problem. So we're going to be hearing a first-person account of an individual who has struggled with his own addictions over the years and has been in recovery for quite some time and is now very active in assisting other people who struggled with the struggles that he had many years ago. And we're also going to hear from the Halifax Public Safety Advisor, who is going to tell us a bit about some of the alternatives to criminalization that are now being explored in Halifax and the province of Nova Scotia. So that's session number 4. And if that's not exciting enough, we go on to session number 5. Of course, we have to deal with the overrepresentation of Indigenous people in our jails. It is a national disgrace. And it's essential that we look at some of the factors that are responsible for the overrepresentation. And we're going to look at some of the programs and services that really, I believe, do give us some cause for optimism. we're very excited to have presenting to us Judge Catherine Benton. And Judge Benton is the first Mi'kmaq woman to be appointed to the bench in Nova Scotia. So she's going to come at it from so many different angles as being a member of the Mi'kmaq community, and as well as being on the bench and seeing how the traditional system has failed Mi'kmaq people. So that will be, I think, a tremendous session. And then finally, for our final session, we are going to be looking at the issues related to the experience of African Nova Scotians in the justice system. It's going to be a very powerful session, and we're going to be looking at the role of intergenerational trauma and systemic racism. We'll obviously be delving into the police street check issue, and we're going to be spending some time on the defending the police debate, because it's been front and center, as everyone knows, over the last year, and we felt it was important to deal with that issue. And we have a couple of tremendous speakers here. We have Dorico Simons. Anybody who attended our first course heard from Dorico, and he is a young, fabulous, he is an organizer in the community. He's now actually been working with the Nova Scotia Office of Equity and Anti-Racism, but he has been very active in many of the pressing issues for the African Nova Scotia community. Fabulous young man. And Charnel Brooks. And Charnel Brooks is the first African Nova Scotia social worker with Nova Scotia Legal Aid. And she will speak from her heart and from her experience of many of the challenges that face African Nova Scotians in their interactions with the justice system. So I'm excited about this course. We think we have some fantastic speakers, and it's going to be a great course. And I really am looking forward to the course in October, and I'm hoping as many of you as possible can join us. And of course, the pandemic has been horrible in so many ways, but with these Zoom presentations, the great thing is you could take all of these courses. They're on different days of the week. So come and join all of us in October. So I will now pass the baton back over to Joan.
Oh, Kit, this sounds just absolutely fabulous. Your first course you gave us, we were all enthralled. The room was full. We were out at the Captain Spry Center, and we had to add chairs. And I know this time, because we're on Zoom, we can have even more join us. So really appreciate the work you've done to pull this together. So now I'm pleased to also introduce our next instructor, Alan Griffiths. And Alan will be presenting his course, Frameworks for Understanding the History of Photography. And that's going to be on Wednesday mornings at 10, from October 6th to November 10th. Alan has presented a number of photography and film related courses. I think we were counting yesterday, somewhere between 8 and 10. So many of you in Halifax have seen Alan, and this is a new course with him. And if you've not taken a course with him, then you'll know you're in for a big visual treat. Alan has lectured on multimedia and consulted worldwide with organizations as diverse as the British Library, IBM, the Portuguese Air Force, European Union, and Eastman Kodak. And he's lectured at the University of Sheffield, been visiting professor at the University of Massachusetts, and chief information architect for a .com startup. And he's maintained an interest in photography throughout all of his life. He started his own website called www.luminous-lint.com in 2005 as a personal exploration of the history of photography. This is an amazing website. Be sure to check it out. I now turn this over to you, Alan, to tell us about your new course.
Greetings to you all. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with SCANS yet again, and I'd like to offer personal thanks to all the volunteers who make this possible. It's truly extraordinary organization. As Joan said, I've given 8 or 10 courses on various aspects of film and photography over the years. And I've been thinking a bit about how one can structure the information on photo history in rather better ways. And this is an entirely new course that explores some of that. On the Luminous Lint website, the odd thing is that the information comes from not only major institutions such as LACMA, the Metropolitan Museum of Fine Art, Victoria and Albert Museum, British Library, etc., etc., but it also comes from the thousands of private collectors around the world who provide images for the website. And this allows me to build up connections right the way through the history of photography in very interesting ways. Recently, for example, I was working on stereo views, little pictures, little cards of stereo that you hold in your hands. And I added these into Luminous Lint, and I suddenly realized what I'd done is I just added 150 million links into the website, which is more than a little scary. This course, though, will take us through a series of themes which they intrigue me, and hopefully they'll interest you. So what I'll do in the first week is look at the simplicity of dates. Like when you think about a photograph, one would naturally think there was just one date, the date that it was taken. But it's far more complex than that. There's the date that it was taken, the date that it was printed, the date that it was copied, the date that it was published, the date that it was maybe released out to different organizations. So a date is a far more complex thing than one would actually imagine. So what I want to do is use archaeology as an example in that particular lecture of some of the dates of the photographs and how it's actually affected the overall history of photography. And that includes not only the examples of the photographs themselves, but also engravings, woodcuts, lithographs, different forms of printing methods that were used to put photographs into books and journals before straight printing of photographs was actually possible. So we'll cover a bit on the dating. The next session, we'll look at some of the formats of photography. Now, this isn't a course on the chemistry of photography. It's not a course on the optics of photography or lenses. Those are areas, or cameras themselves, those are areas way beyond my skill set. But again, there's lots of specialists who deal with that. What I'm interested in is the actual images that are created by any means. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you some of the formats, and we'll discuss them a little bit. And we start out with the daguerreotypes, which was one of the earliest forms, and then we'll go right the way through to contemporary digital photography. And where possible, I'll show you actual examples of those and discuss the significance of how they were done and how the different formats of photography influence the way those photographs were reproduced in print for a wider audience. For example, as photography expanded through the world, obviously travel books became increasingly important, scientific monographs became important, criminology became important, and each of these has its own photographic history. So I'll be looking at bits of those. One of the things that I had to think about when I was developing the website Luminous Lint was the idea of visual indexes. How can you link photographs together in a logical sequence for display? And what are the relationships between images? Now, I used to study information science when I worked at university. And one of the interesting things there is to understand library classification systems, typologies, and the ways that one image is actually linked to another. So what I'm going to do in this particular lecture is discuss some of the ways that images can be linked together to improve retrieval, but also to get us to think more seriously about the nature of images. And indeed, given the current state of the internet, where we look at something like Google and we look at Google images and we see related images, we can now understand the importance of something like artificial intelligence to get us the best images related to whatever we're interested in. So we'll discuss some of those as a theme. The next topic is a bit larger. If we have a visual index, what we need to do is to put it in some sort of context of photography. And that's the themes, genres, the typologies of photography. You know, these are the things like fashion photography, landscape photography, portrait photography. How have those evolved and how are they looked at? What are the ways that we group photographs together? Not only that, it links to the ways that the classic books on photography, the Beaumont Newells, have actually been constructed, and they have come up with a canon of photography, which actually sort of, it's so embodied in us now that we can't get outside that framework. So I want to discuss the frameworks a bit. Another issue which is really interesting is regional thinking. You see, we live in Canada, and therefore if we go and buy a book on the history of photography, it tends to be a book on Canadian photography, or more likely a book on American photography, or more likely still a book on European photography. But the more I look into the history of photography, the more you realize you're self-censoring yourself. I mean, as an example, a lot of the time these days, I'm working with a collector in St. Petersburg who is showing me photography from Russia that is literally mind-blowing. And so what I mean, you realize is we're blinkered in our views of the history of photography by our knowledge of languages, by our knowledges of foreign history. And so this particular lecture is to make us understand some of the issues of regional thinking and its limitations. Another area which is absolutely overlooked is the subject for my final lecture, and that's on the ephemera of photography. There is no book on the ephemera of photography. I mean, it doesn't exist. I mean, there are little bits in some books. There are some websites that deal with obscure parts of it. But there's a whole area that we tend to overlook, like the business invoices of Prince Albert, for example, where he was actually buying photographs because he was a big collector of photographs. And Prince Albert amassed over 11,000 photographs in his collection. Okay, but it's the invoices. How much did he pay for them? The sales receipts, the checks, the overdue letters, the use of photographs on women's sewing boxes or on the top of a cane, like the use of photographs in cufflinks, all the strange ephemera. There is an absolutely bizarre range of material that is little known, and there's very few examples surviving. So what I want to do in these 6 lectures is give you an overview of some of the topics that interest me and will hopefully interest you. And I very much hope you'll join me on Wednesdays to come along and hear my adventures. Imagine me as a sort of carnival barker, coming up with the ideas and calling you into a tent full of mysteries and to take you through adventures. Come on in. I'll now hand you back to Joan. Thank you, Joan.
Thanks, Alan. Your courses are all such fun, and you are a barker, but it's a great thrill to be in your classes. So I look forward to this one being online. Other courses I've taken with you, we've been in theaters with big screens. So this time we have our own screen right in front of us. So looking forward to your course. Now I'm to have a chance to welcome back to SCAN's Dr. Hilda Taylor. Her course, Plants, People, and Politics, was previously scheduled for the spring, but we had to cancel everything at the beginning of COVID, and we're delighted that she's able to give it to us now. And that'll be taking place on Thursday afternoons at 1:30 from October 7th to November 18th. All of the information about when our courses are, of course, are all on our website. Hilda obtained her BSc from the University of Liverpool and her PhD from the University of Waterloo. After moving to Wolfville in 1971, she started a variety of courses at Acadia University with a biology department, and her research interests were mycological. For several years, she ran the scanning electron program. She was also active in several organizations involved with equity matters, serving on the Canadian Association of University Teachers Status of Women Committee. Hilda has a knack of relating her knowledge of plants to everyday global and local issues. And then we can all relate to those, and they're very much even ones that are present in the news today. I turn this over to you, Hilda, to tell us more about your course.
Thank you. Thank you. That was I'm glad that you mentioned the interest in current issues. I appreciate that. I'd like to tell you about the course that I'm offering now. And following on from what Joan said, I think we all underestimate, we don't think about the role that plants actually play in our lives at the moment and that played in the development of humankind over time. So I've made a little list just to say some of the things that came to my mind. Number one, very human thing, we eat them. Plants are an important food source for us and for animals. We use them to clothe us. Particularly in the past, we used them to make dwellings and to put furniture and fittings inside those dwellings, vessels that we ate out of, what have you. They were critical for our mode of transportation, carts, boats, what have you. Fuel, we used them to keep us warm. We made tools out of them. We made weapons out of them, in the early days particularly. And then we used them to heal ourselves as an incredible wealth of pharmaceutical plant use. We used them ritualistically. We use them in all sorts of ceremonies, all sorts of cultures. The two that spring to mind, I can give you an example. How many of you haul a Christmas tree in every year? How many have palms on Palm Sunday? Plants have been used ritualistically in all sorts of ways. We use them also to help us get a mate. They're used to increase the allure of each of us during ritualistic performances. We use scents. Think of belladonna. Women putting drops of the deadly nightshade in their eyes because it makes the pupils grow and the eyes become alluring. We use them as color decoration in that way. And then we also use them every culture to change moods and to change perceptions, mood altering drugs, whether it's a cup of coffee to kick you going in the morning, caffeine, or we can go right through the range of types of drugs through to cocaine and to heroin, and look at the current day crisis with opioids. And we shouldn't also forget that even in the most remote, tiny places, people use plants to beautify their surroundings. That's a sort of incidental, but it's always there. And the last thing I want to say to you is, remember, Agatha Christie, William Shakespeare, they both used them really well to poison people. Plants are wonderful biochemists. They make magnificent molecules. So I, through the course, would like to look, I've picked the sort of exciting, high-profile situations to talk about. And we'll look at things that are present day, and we'll look historically as well. For instance, I don't know how many of you at home now listening are here in Nova Scotia as a consequence of the Irish famine. But that had tremendous worldwide effects in distributing people from Ireland all over the world in all sorts of circumstances. The British cup of tea didn't come easily. The tea plant only grew in China. Getting that plant out of China was a major exercise in the British government sending botanists disguised as locals into China to steal tea plants. There were wars. There was tremendous consequences from getting out that British cup of tea. And then we can think of our own history. How many of you are aware of the Marco Polo, the tea clippers, the development of those fast ships? Because the faster that you got your tea to the UK, the more money you got for it. So we see that aspect too. We can talk about the opioid crisis, heroin trade, cocaine trade. We'll talk about current medicinal drugs, which are plant-based and can't be synthesized in the lab. There are some of them, there used to be many more, but there are still some used which have to be derived from plants. I'll talk about the history even of the humble aspirin. And I think we'll have the truth for the story of the mutiny on the Bounty. All sorts of interesting stories. I have presentations with PowerPoints. There'll be a little bit of chemistry. It'll be very, very basic. And it's there to let you know how things work and why things work. I think it's totally understandable, but it does enhance the story. So that's what I'm going to do. It's a really interesting aspect of life, and I'd like you to be there, and we'll see how we go. And now I'll hand the microphone over to Jocelyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda. This is going to be a very much of a fun course. Each of the courses presented so far, I want to go to them. So it's going to be really hard to choose. Thank you. I now have the pleasure to introduce our instructor for the Friday afternoon course, Dr. Pierre Schmidt, who is a new instructor at the Seniors College and is offering a course that is entitled Almost Everything You Wanted to Know About Medical Imaging and Were Afraid to Ask. I think that for the coming term, everyone is going to be looking forward to having a Friday afternoon course, and especially since it is going to be X-rated course. You'll be happy to be over 50, and you will tell all your friends about how they should go and sign up on the website. I predict that this course will be much more popular than any dramatic semi-pseudo medical show on TV like Grey's Anatomy and Chicago Med. Well, it's going to be more interesting because it will be about reality. Just before telling you about Dr. Schmidt's 43-year career, I would like to tell you a little bit about the succession of events that led us to be able to offer Dr. Schmidt's medical course. We hope it will be a help for potential instructors in the audience to decide to give a course and to know how to go about it. So it was the night before Christmas, or it felt like a gift, excuse me, that it was with great excitement that because our webmaster, Bill Lee, has placed a contact choice on the menu of the Seniors College website, that our office manager, Sue Hawks, received an email from Pierre. He had filled the web form with a CV and a brief description of the course that he was proposing to offer at the college. Sue sent the message to Joan Hicks and to me, and we communicated with Pierre, and we met him on Zoom so as to discuss his course, his availability, and to give him some info about how things go on in the Seniors College. Then, when the course was scheduled, we asked him to fill a couple more forms. We do have paperwork. And then Bill and Bob got in touch with Pierre to discuss the audiovisual process. And they gave him a document with guidelines. So Bill and Bob are very good at directing people how to do things. And they are mentors for all the people who volunteer and give courses. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Pierre's education and his career as a pediatric radiologist. It's ever since high school that Pierre was interested in pediatrics, and this is why he chose to study medicine. When he became a medical resident in the Paris University hospitals, Pierre's first 4 months rotation was in pediatric radiology. And it was followed by a year of training in general pediatrics. where he realized that it is the part about making a diagnosis that was his calling. So after finishing his residency, he came back to pediatric radiology, where he spent 3 years specializing, doing his fellowship in the same department where he had done his initial training in Paris. Pierre explained that he was exposed to more and more imaging techniques throughout his career. When he first became a medical resident, it's X-rays and ultrasounds that were the key imaging methods available to doctors. And while later on, body computed tomography was just starting to emerge during the time he was a resident. Then 3 or 4 years later, by the end of his residency and fellowship, magnetic resonance was in its infancy. So he saw the expansion of imaging techniques to make diagnoses. With time, he could use more tools to be a detective and to make a more refined diagnosis to help improve children's health. It was this ability to look at the patient through different wavelengths by uncovering different layers of information that attracted Dr. Schmidt to pediatric radiology. Dr. Schmidt worked in pediatric imaging, more specifically in musculoskeletal imaging, which we'll learn what all these words mean, for 24 years in France, and then he came to Canada. He arrived in Halifax in January of 2006 to work at the IWK as a staff radiologist. Later, from 2015 to 2020, he was chief of the diagnostic imaging department. He was also a professor at Dalhousie in the radiology department, and he retired in 2020. It is Dr. Schmidt's interest in teaching medical students and residents and in making scientific presentations at national and international meetings and writing peer-reviewed articles that brought him to offer a course at SCANS. So you see, it is a Christmas gift to all of us. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Pierre Smith to present his course that starts on Friday afternoons in exactly 1 month. Pierre, your turn.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn, for this very kind introduction. I'm a little bit tense because although I have done a few international conferences, it's a first for me to be able to speak in front of a SCAN audience. Can I have my first slide, please? Okay. Thank you very much. I'm not very good at that yet. Although technology should be lovely, here we are. I think we're good. So good morning. Thank you for the introduction. This is this movie which gave me the idea of using a similar title for. I don't have control. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Give you an idea for the title of the series of presentation. Almost everything you wanted to know about medical imaging, but were afraid to ask. And what I'm asking you is, please, to forgive my French or my English. Through my career as a pediatric radiologist, I was trained in and have practiced every modality used in medical imaging, radiograph or X-rays with their different application, computed tomography or CT, ultrasound or US, magnetic resonance imaging or MR imaging or MRI, as well as nuclear medicine or NUCMED or scintigraphy. I also perform interventional radiology or image-guided therapy. But note that I do not intend to provide medical advice. I am retired. My license has expired. My professional insurance is cancelled. And I will show you many images. Some may be perceived as graphic by some of you. Most of them are from the internet. I may tell you some anecdotes to exemplify and illustrate a point, but there would be no specifics or private information disclosed. My goals, maybe goals is a little bit, I hope that I will be able to help you to understand the basic physics principles used to create images using these different modalities, X-rays, CT, US, MRI, nuclear medicine, and IGT. I hope I will be able to help you to understand why one method of imaging is chosen versus another one with respect to the clinical presentation of the patient and with respect to what is best for the patient. And I will also discuss what could be the nefarious effects of one given method. Finally, I hope that I will be able to approach with you how radiologists and other doctors can err when searching for a diagnosis and sometimes make mistakes. During this course, you will understand what is the connection between those four images. You have here a schematic drawing of a Crookes tube, which was the ancestor of X-ray equipment. You will understand why beetles might have been important in the genesis of CT through the initial label EMI. You will of course understand the connection between a bat and an ultrasound machine, but you will be also able to understand why your microwave oven is in fact very, very similar to an MRI machine. You will also see how we moved from this very first image of Carl Röntgen's wife and this very simplistic elementary radiography lab to these images, which are in this case a 3D volume rendering image obtained from a CT with a patient with a scoliosis, and you see the detail of the vertebra and the bony bar on the back, on the posterior aspect of the spine, which is causing the scoliosis, how we can obtain this 3D volume rendering of ultrasound images of a fetus in the maternal uterus, or how we can have from MR imaging these images showing the connectivity between the different areas of the brain. You will understand as well how radiologists can fuse images, like in this example of PET CT, where CT scan images are fused with scintigraphy in order to show areas affected by cancer. Finally, radiology, which was initially a very contemplative specialty in medicine, now has turned into a much more active specialty with image-guided therapy. And this is an example that we will show during the course, where you have a patient with an intracranial arterial aneurysm, and the radiologist progressively fills the aneurysm with a coil and occlude completely the aneurysm at the end of the procedure, preventing this aneurysm to bleed. In the last talk, we will try to figure out how radiologists see and think, how mistakes happen or not, and how we are trying to avoid them individually and through system improvement. Thank you for your attention. And now I pass the torch to Joan for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Mute myself there. Am I unmuted now? Pierre, thank you so much. And thanks for offering to teach this course for us. We're just delighted. My closing remarks are ones of, first of all, thanking everybody for helping make this fall session happen. I'd like to thank Fern Jordan from the Mahone Bay chapter, Jocelyn Hillou, who coordinates the Halifax chapter along with me, and for them helping organize the fall term. Also thanks to Bill Lee and Bob Russell for all their technical wizardry and their coordination. Now it's a daunting task for us to choose which courses we want to take. And because there's one on each day, they don't overlap, and because they're on Zoom, we can take them all if we want to. So I'm kind of thinking I might want to do that because there's no way of deciding. Registration actually begins today. And so you go to our SCAN's website and you can log in. And from there on, you can just get yourself registered if you're not a member. And if you are a member, you just proceed on and get yourself registered. So I look forward to you having a good fall term. Look forward to sometime in the future us all being able to meet in person and perhaps still continue also having Zoom courses. And for today, I'd like to thank everybody for attending this session. Look forward to you having a good fall. And I'd like to thank everybody who presented, to all our instructors. And I'd like a special thank you to all of them for offering to teach. So look forward to everybody having a great fall. Thank you.